But yeah, no, I guess the thing to just say to all of you is I'm happy to be here. You're catching me in basically what is the middle of the night for me right now, because normally I'm unconscious. And the reason why is because of my crazy, weird schedule. So I do the morning show at WIFC, Callaway on the Rise. And so when I do that, I normally get up really, really early. And so normally by this time of the afternoon, I have kind of hit a wall, so to speak. And so I'm normally, napping out big time because my wife and I, we normally stay up pretty late in the evening. And yeah, so going to try and stay semi-conscious through all of this, guys.
Thank you so much for doing that. I didn't even think about your schedule and how that affects your sleep and everything. So thank you for waking up in this beautiful Wednesday.
You got to be ready for anything. I don't know if you ever noticed this with anybody who's on in a news capacity, on a news station. But there's times where, well, let's go to reporter so and they're in Japan. And it'll be 2-3 o'clock in the morning whenever they're trying to talk to that reporter over there. They're 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for that reporter. You just got to be ready whenever. That's what it's all about. So.
Very cool. Well, Dave, can you talk to us a little bit about what your typical day looks like then? Maybe even starting about what time you wake up at and kind of what you do throughout the day.
You bet. My day kind of starts in the middle of the night. It starts about 3:30 in the morning. That's when I normally start trying to get, awake a little bit. And then I start trying to figure the show out immediately. Normally what we do is we write out kind of a template of what we're doing. My partner, Nikki Montgomery, and I, when we do the radio show, we both are radio veterans. I've been in radio now for about 40 something years. I mean, it's over 40 years, I would say. But between Nikki and I both, she's got a 20 plus year radio career as well. So, what we used to do when you would start radio and you would do radio shows, you would write a lot of it out in long form. And it would take a long time to write that out. And as you go along and you get more experienced at it, then you end up not doing that so much. And you just give yourself little notes all the way through the show. So that's basically what we write out, is we write out this sort of notes thing, for the whole show. And then we go in and we get her done. I go into the studio and I start doing the radio show at 5 a.m. And then Nikki joins me an hour later at 6 o'clock, and we stay in the radio studio until 10 a.m. every day doing the radio show. And then when we get done with the show, a lot of times, even before the show's even over, we start putting the next day's show together, like who's going to be our guest and or any of that kind of stuff. Is there any news that we need to cover? Is there any like little contest things, like we're going to give something away? We probably want to have that all ready to go. And so even before 10 a.m. rolls around, we're normally starting to piece that together. And then definitely at 10 a.m., try and wrap the rest of that up. And the rest of our day is a lot of just like meetings, trying to figure things out. There was a huge event that was announced yesterday on our show about a balloon rally. And so we would normally start having meetings and huddles, and trying to figure out how we're going to cover those things, what's needed and all that. And normally about noon or so, I normally get out of the radio station, and Nikki gets out of there probably around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then, go home, crash, get some sleep. Sleep's your friend. Got to have sleep. And then, get ready for the next day.
Wow. And so when you guys are planning for the radio each day, is there like a specific, do you always have a guest and you always have, like, is there specific things that you're expected to hit as part of your job, or that your supervisors look for of what you need to have every day?
As far as guests, not every day, but a lot of times it kind of works out that way that we will have a guest either recorded and we play that interview, something like that, or that we are going to talk to somebody live. So an example would be our guest yesterday morning was the guy that created the Wausau Balloon Rally. And so he and his wife, they had found out that they're not going to do the Wausau Balloon Rally this year. And they really, really wanted to do it. So maybe about a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago, they made the announcement that they were not going to do that. Well, Steve and Nancy, they want to do an event anyway. And so they created another event, which was going to be huge news to the community. And so we lined it up on when we were going to talk to them on the show, which was yesterday morning. And they first announced to all media, they first announced on our show, on Kallaway on the Rise, that they were going to do this thing called the Taste and Glow Hot Air Balloon Fest. And it's taking place in July, and they made their announcement on our show live yesterday morning. So, you know, we planned for that, went ahead and did the interview live on the air. And so those kinds of things are kind of what happens every day. Is you're taking interviews, your little segments where you're having fun, topics, all that sort of thing. Yeah, that's what we try and figure out, and where it's going to go and where it's going to fit on the show.
Oh. Does anybody have a question they have written down that they'd like to ask right now?
Is he on radio right now?
What?
Is he on radio right now?
Oh, Jacqueline asked, are you on radio right now?
I'm not on the radio right now, which is kind of good. It's got, you know, we already did that when we do our morning show. It's interesting because there was a period of time where I was on for 5 hours, and there was something where one of my bosses, they had backed it off. So I got off at 9 o'clock in the morning instead of 10 o'clock. It was so strange because I'm so used to being on the air for 5 hours that I went in and I begged him to put me back on till 10 a.m. And it's just because you get used to a certain an amount of time that you're doing radio, and you're goofing around and doing the thing. And so they finally let me back on, so that I was on for 5 a.m. until 10 a.m. every day. Otherwise, yeah, I was just kind of out of sorts, you know, as far as not being on the radio for that long. And I just I love it. I think it's really fun. I always tell people that when I'm doing radio, it beats having a job, because it really is a lot of fun. I'm working with a great partner, Nikki Montgomery. She's a very upbeat person, and we just have a great time. And it's like playing. You go into a room and you kind of prepare to play and goof around. That's really what radio seems like to me after all these years.
So another question that was kind of coming from the email, what led you to radio? Was there a specific moment when you were younger, or what was your kind of career path? Last week we talked about preparing for a first job, that might not be your career in life, but maybe even throwing us any ideas of what jobs you've had in the past, even when you were a teen, and kind of what led you to be here at WIFC.
Well, it started when I was in high school, and in high school I had typing class, and they would allow us to listen to the radio in typing class, which was always great, because we're sitting there trying our darndest to figure out how to type. And meanwhile, we've got the radio cranked, and we got a chance to listen to that. And I found that for me personally, I was listening to the DJ more than I was listening to the music or anything else. And so when the DJ would come on, you know, I'd listen to how he was, you know, talking on the radio, and I'd go, God, that sounds really cool. I would love to do that. And so I got to a point where I got to meet a couple of DJs in our area, and you know, what it took to do that. I thought about maybe going to find out how to get an engineering degree, because I thought that's what you needed to get in radio. And I learned later there were so many other things that you needed to learn besides electronic kind of things, you know, for being an engineer. And so I did go to school for being an engineer. And that's what I learned, is that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be an engineer at all, that the on-air part was really the fun part. So I ended up going to the engineering school radio station. When I was in high school, I started going to a college radio station and doing a radio show there. They allowed me. I said, listen, can you just please let me on? I want to get a taste of this and see what this is all about. And they let me on the air. And I really, you know, there's certain things in life, your career just might bite you and make you go, oh, that's it. That's what I want to do. And that's really what happened in radio. And so when I tried to get a job at a commercial station, a regular radio station, you know, I went ahead and I walked in and I said, you know, I want to apply. And they said, do you have any experience? No, I don't have any experience. And they said, okay, well, we need to hear your voice recorded. And so we're going to put you in a room, and we're going to let you record yourself. I went, okay, cool. So they had this recorder, and they turned on the recorder. And at that time, back in the day, there were a lot of DJs that had really interesting voices. They don't sound like, you know, we're trying to sound right now, where, you know, you're trying to sound like you're talking normally. And so a lot of guys had these pull-on voices where they sounded kind of weird. And one of the guys was a guy named Wolfman Jack on the air, and he had a very cranked up voice. So what it would sound like is this. And I thought that's how you were supposed to sound. So I started talking like that, and I recorded it, and they heard it. So I got done with this sort of audition that I did, with that voice. And they were shaking their heads and laughing, and they were calling people in like, you guys, you got to hear this guy. Look what he's doing. So I did it all wrong. That's not how you do it. And so they said, no, just relax. We just want you to be on the air and, sound upbeat, but you don't have to do that kind of weird voice at all. Don't do that. So even after learning how to not do it, I still got the job, which told me they were desperate for DJs. And I learned how to just kind of relax finally and talk, like this, instead of trying to talk like this.
Very cool. Does anyone have a question that they have written down? I'd like to go to you guys again if you have a question.
Oh, I
like
do.
Graham?
Did you have a previous job?
Did you have, what do you mean by that? Like in radio or other things?
No.
Did you have a previous job, whether it was when you were a teen or before WIFC or the other commercial station you talked about?
There's a couple of things that I sort of tried, because there was one thing I tried to do, and it was try to go to work for the Better Business Bureau. And it was one of those things where you go door to door, and you have to do things where you're presenting something to people door to door. Was really no good at it. And another thing I tried was working in a restaurant, which actually I kind of liked. I kind of liked working at a pizza place. And that was really about it. But in high school, when this whole thing kind of took off and getting a chance to work at a radio station, that was really the first legit thing that I tried. And I've learned along the way that there's a lot of things you're going to be interested in as you go through life and you start getting a job, that you've got to pay attention to things you're interested in, because you can bring it to the party later. Because one of the things I wanted to make sure I mentioned today is that when I started, is that the thing you were supposed to do is put a radio show together and then go do that radio show. So 100% radio, you would do your radio show. That's what they were paying you for. So now it's really different. About 50% of my day is radio, and the rest of the day is either, doing stuff like this where we're in a Zoom room, or it's doing pictures, photography, and covering events. And so online stuff, all that, like social media is a huge deal to all the DJs that work at WIFC. We're all on Instagram and Twitter and Twitch and all that, and Facebook. And so when we're doing all our social media throughout the day, I probably don't wrap that up until maybe 11 o'clock at night or so. And so, yeah, I stay up pretty late doing that kind of stuff every single day. But that takes up the rest of my day. So you do your radio, but then you also have to do a ton of stuff online.
Cool. Ryan, did you have a question to share?
Yes. What if you want to be the co-host in the morning? What job experience would you get if you want to be the morning co-host, like a station like WIFC or something?
So if you want to become a co-host for a show, what experience or what kind of pathway should a high schooler start to take now to work experience or any of that to become a co-host?
It's it's kind of surprising to give the advice in that, because it's really all over the map. But there's a couple of things in particular. One is you have to, if you're going to do radio, like what we're doing at WIFC, it's set up so that someone's going to be in control of the show. And so between Nikki and I, that's me. And so what I mean by that is electronically, I have a control board that's in front of me, and I've got about 4 computer monitors that are around me. And so I'm controlling a lot of what's happening with the show as far as the timing, what's coming up, the volume controls that are on that board. And so I always tell people that, you have to figure all that out and work that stuff while you're talking. And that's really, really hard. And so you ever tried this thing, where you pat on your head and you rub on your belly? Yeah. So this is like 2 things at the same time. This is what you've got to get good at if you're going to try and do radio. And so I tell people, try and figure out how to do the electronic part of it first, by going to radio stations. See if there's any way you can do things on the weekend to just keep the radio station on the air. There's a lot of stuff that you hear on the radio that is already pre-recorded. It's pre-recorded shows, or it's national shows that we get on satellite. And so the person who's in the studio is just really kind of controlling all the volumes and everything and making sure it all stays on the air. Well, it may seem like a simple thing, but you really got to get that figured out first, while you're trying to figure out how to do more than one thing. Then after you learn how to control all that stuff and know what it all means, how it all works, then you figure out how to talk. And so I always tell people there's a couple of things you really should get into early on. One is there any way to get into a drama class where you can get into something where you end up, you don't have to do like a full-blown play or anything like that on stage. You could, and I think that's beneficial, but I mean something where you get into a drama class where you're in a class where you talk and you get a chance to talk in front of other people. Because on radio, even though, there's not an audience like right there, you're still talking to that audience. And so you've got to figure out how to get comfortable doing that. And that takes forever, takes a long time. And the other part of it that takes a while is that you're talking a lot while you're doing something else. You're probably writing something that goes online or something like that. And, or you're getting something ready in your computer system so that you can keep the show going. And so multitasking, typing, getting into a drama class, learning how to speak, vocal, things that you can learn in school. All of that is huge when it comes to trying to do radio.
That's really awesome that there's a lot of things that you guys can start now if you're interested in that. That you're able to start preparing for that now.
I've been in Penguin Project of CWCT since 2016, and I've experienced drama actually.
Penguin Project's a great place to start, Ryan.
Yes, even we have a cool news at school, a news station, and I'm starting to do that.
Yep, Lumberjack Productions.
Yes.
All right. Another question for you: how has COVID changed work for you?
It was radical last year when things got started. So we normally would have a very full schedule, a schedule on the calendar, and a lot of that had to do with appearances. So normally WIFC, normally throughout the week, you do a lot of radio shows. And then when like Thursday, Friday, Saturday would roll around, then we normally were on location somewhere. We were doing like a remote broadcast or an appearance where they needed somebody to be an announcer of some sort at an event. And every weekend, normally through the spring, summer especially, but it would be loaded. I mean, we would be just every single weekend, there would be stuff going on. So when COVID came out and all of a sudden there was this lockdown and, you couldn't really do any of that stuff, our calendar completely cleared out. There was none of that to do whatsoever. And so we thought, wow, we're going to have a lot of free time on our hands. And I really thought we would. And we really didn't. I mean, it was more focusing on getting the message out, what was happening with COVID, with everything. And when September rolled around of last year, I got COVID-19 and it ripped me to shreds. There's a lot of people when they get COVID-19, they get the coronavirus that they don't have any symptoms or very mild symptoms. I had all the symptoms. I had problems galore. So the way I knew I had it is that I, first of all, just wasn't feeling very good. It was a pretty nice day and I went outside and man, I was chilling. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I've got a fever, I might have a fever. So I checked my temperature. Sure enough, I did. And then besides that, I started having breathing problems. And so, and being a DJ and having to talk on the air, that was really weird because normally you have to have good, ability to breathe and talk and all that. And that all went away. All of a sudden, I couldn't really breathe that well without, coughing like crazy. And so that was going on. And then this fever stayed with me for a full week. And that's the other thing is normally if you get the flu, you get anything like that where you're feeling under the weather, you might feel bad where you've got a temperature for a day or two, but then, come on, it should go away. And it wasn't going away. So I got tested for COVID and found out and I confirmed I actually had it. And one of the things I did to try and get back to square one, because I thought, at some point I want to get back on the radio, is that I was trying to figure out how to breathe. Breathing out really wasn't a problem. It was when I would take a breath in and I would just take it in just a little bit and I would start coughing like crazy. So that I've got to figure something out. And so I called a lot of local singer friends of mine in bands. And fortunately in radio, you get a chance to work with a lot of local bands and you get to know them. They become your friends. And so I was asking local singers, what do I do? I need to do something in order to do some kind of vocal warm up to get my lung power back so I can actually get on the radio. And they all said, listen, we're going to give you these things to do. And one of the tricks was doing this vocal warm-up where you sound like Chewbacca from Star Wars. So Chewbacca used to sound, you would take your tongue and you'd put it on the roof of your mouth. So when you do that, you sound like this. And you sound like Chewbacca. And so I would take a breath in, and I did it really, really slow. And then I kept doing that as long as a breath would let me do that. So I kept doing that over and over again. And the other thing was doing vocal warm-ups with scales. Whenever you sing notes, you go la, 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 and you kept doing these scales up and down. And I did that as much as I could and practice like you're singing, warming up to sing. And that's what helped me get my lung power back so that I could actually go do a radio show. That took 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of just feeling like absolute garbage before I could get back on the radio.
Wow.
Right.
My experience. Oh, Abby, you have a question?
What environment do you like working?
What was that?
What environment do you like working?
Oh, the question is, what kind of environment do you like working in?
Oh, you know what? The environment, we kind of create our environment. I'll have to show you, if you don't follow me on Facebook, you'll see occasionally, we throw on selfies and whatnot out of the studio. But our environment it's interesting. It really is, because you've got to have a fun environment. You don't want an office environment. And which, I think a lot of studios, they're pretty plain, there's no decorations. And so we ended up decorating our studio a lot. We put a palm tree in there. So we have a palm tree. We love our palm tree. And then we also, Christmas lights. On a regular basis, I go to Menards, and whenever I can, I buy up all their patio and all their Christmas lights. And we end up leaving those on throughout the year. And we use only those lights. There's some of those really long, and you have them in your, the room that you're in right now. You have those long cylinder lights. Those are fluorescent lights. We have those, but we turn all those off. And the reason why is because we have all these computer monitors around us. And so the computer monitors are giving us lots of light. And so we're getting plenty of light that way. And we have our Christmas lights that kind of create a party atmosphere. Palm tree, we got that going on, and we've decorated it so that it's a fun room to walk into and then jump on the radio. And so I love that for an environment. And when we go on location, we try and do the same thing, is we just try and create a really cool atmosphere that's fun. And the other part of it that helps a lot is music, is that, it's really fun being at a place where you can play music. It's okay to play music. They want you to play music. That's what you do for a living if you're on a music radio station. And when we go on location, we take the music with us. We normally take speakers with us, so that we can jam out some tunes while we're on location.
Oh, sounds like you need a disco ball next, is what we're hearing from.
Yes.
We do. I was going to say, I'm going to see if I can't find it right here and show it to you. Maybe you can see it. Is that I have little disco balls.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
cool. Gotta have them. You gotta have them. It's important. Disco balls rule.
There you go. You guys like disco balls?
Yes.
Sam, you have another question?
Who feeds the tree when you are away?
Who feeds the palm tree?
Oh, yeah, you do. You have to make sure that everybody goes, okay, is the palm tree okay? Are we good to go? Has the palm tree been fed? Yeah, it's important. Yeah, if you love something, occasionally you got to water it, and so that's what we do.
That's super
Yeah,
nice.
like I love my dad.
What about people that are interested in radio, but not necessarily being one to talk in front of people? Are there other opportunities to be involved in radio, but not necessarily be like a radio host?
There's a lot, and that's what changed in COVID too, because when before COVID-19, we had our entire internet department, which is a lot of people. We've got a lot of people who they're in charge of creating things like graphics, and the graphics. What I mean by that is that, let's say, pick something to give away. Let's say we're going to give away a car. Well, they'd be the ones who would have a graphic of a car, and they would, create this thing that looks like a car with the WIFC logo behind it and all that. And that's what is going to go on to our webpage, for example. And so graphic artists, that's a big deal. Those people don't talk on the radio at all. All they do all through the day is that. And so the other people who are technical people who make sure that the websites are all good and healthy, and that, you know, we're streaming properly, because the streaming that we do for our radio station, it's interesting. We get a lot of people who are listeners who don't live here. And so they are people, primarily are people who used to live here. And so if you live in Florida, Arizona, out in California, New York, or you're in the service and maybe you're serving overseas, like in Germany, then we hear from those people all the time. And the way that they end up listening to us is through streaming online. They'll listen to WIFC. And so we got to make sure that those things are working. And we've got people who, that's their job, is just to make sure that that thing is working properly. And the other part of it is marketing and managers. Boy, do we have managers. We have a lot. I think I have, personally for me, I think I've got it's three different managers that I answer to, you know, for all kinds of things. But these are people who are managing just the radio station and DJs like me. And then there's other people who are marketing directors, and those would be people who are in sales, because when you get into commercial radio, you're selling commercials a lot. And I always say that's what keeps the lights on, because when you sell advertising, then that's the way that the radio station can function as a business, is you have to have marketing and salespeople. And so that's another opportunity, is if you go down a sales road where that's more your thing, instead of being on the air, that's a great thing to do. And then marketing is also coming up with ideas all the time in order to sell, because we do contests all the time. And those contests normally are things where we work with people who are businesses, you know, and we work with them in exchange for advertising dollars. You know, we put together, you know, the whole contest or project using these advertisers. And so, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities besides being on the radio.
Very cool. All right, is there any last questions that you guys have? That was kind of all my questions. Brian, you have
got
one?
like two more.
Okay, what's your question?
My first question is, how did the hiring process go with COVID?
Like, were they
Like
still
in
hiring?
radio, like how did it go? I mean,
How did the hiring process go during COVID?
with the radio.
Did you do Zoom calls or in person, or were you not able to hire at that time?
You know what? It basically just the way we're doing it right now, because we needed people. When we went into COVID, we really thought that there was going to be sort of a freeze on everything, including hiring people. And we realized in a hurry that, because I think everybody thought we were going to be on vacation, you know, is that as a DJ, you might do your radio show and there was nothing else needed, nothing else to do for the rest of the day. And man, were we wrong. We were completely wrong, because we needed extra people to do extra things for us online, you know, with our websites and all that. And then DJs, you know, I mean, there's a constant influx of people who are coming and going. And so as people work in Wausau, one of the goals in radio is to see if you can't go to like a larger market, maybe a better situation, because people have come from here and then went to Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, and those are bigger cities. And the potential to get paid more and, you know, do bigger shows with bigger radio budgets, it's huge. So yeah, during COVID, a lot of times if we needed to do something where we were trying to hire people, yeah, we'd get on Zoom. And I personally, with co-workers that I've had who've been on the air with me, I had some great co-hosts throughout the years. And I remember with one, because one of my co-hosts was a gal, her name is Karina. And Karina's from New York City. And the way that we ended up talking, and this was even before COVID kicked in, was through doing a Zoom meeting like this. And we just found out that it was really the way to go, to meet with people safely. And so we ended up using Zoom a lot. And what we end up doing besides doing that sort of thing where we're talking to people for job interviews is we're talking to them for our blogs and our podcasts. So we put podcasts on the air every single week, and then we write blogs. And what happened in COVID is that there were a lot of bands in the area that all of a sudden couldn't perform anywhere. It's like they didn't know what to do. And so they started doing living room concerts. And so these bands, they would get together in living rooms and they would perform anyway. And they weren't, you know, at a place. They weren't at a bar or big venue or a bowling alley performing. And so they were performing online, and they would do it through Zoom. Well, we would interview them. We would interview them about that thing in this kind of environment where you're in a Zoom room. And so that worked for a while, but then you know what? It wore them out. they didn't want to do it anymore. They got tired of doing it. And so for quite a while now, since late last year, I haven't seen any of the local bands doing that anymore. What's good is that we are starting to come out of COVID and they're starting to get jobs. I've stayed in touch with a lot of band friends of mine, and I would contact them and talk to them about dates to see if they're available, because people would ask me, hey, do you know of a good band? And I would check with these bands. And for me, here's a good answer. This is what I'm hearing is they're all saying, you know what, we're booked that weekend. No, we're booked that weekend. Oh, we've got something going on that weekend. So they're getting busy again. And that's, I think, going to help us get back to normal, is having live music and things to go to here once everybody gets, vaccinated and all that.
Cool. Any other questions?
What was my mistake?
Do you have one more question, Ryan?
I think I do.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what it is.
Anybody else have a question of Beta?
How about you come back and go to the other
Okay.
while I think of my second question?
All right, Dave. Well, I think that was kind of the questions we had for you. Is there anything that else you wanted to add, or words of wisdom that you might have for anyone?
I would say at this stage of the game, guys, because you've got a lot of things ahead of you. And when you start thinking about things you want to do, you never know what passions you've got in life that are going to turn into something that might help out with your job situation. Because your job, when you look at those at some point, there'll be some kind of a job description. It'll say, this is what we want you to do. And here's the job description. Well, that's going to be, in my world, I would look at that as, okay, this is what you're expected to do. Is there anything else you can add to that so that you can do an even better job? Or to your bosses, they're going to think, hey, wow, he's doing extra things. She's doing extra things in order to be a better employee. And so for me, years ago, this is, a good, 20 something years ago, I really got into photography in a big way. And so now I'm really the go-to photographer for our company, because when events would come up, concerts would happen, something needed to be taken a picture of and then put online on our websites, a lot of times I go do that. And so that's something that I love, because I love photography. I've got all the photography gear in the universe now. And so I do that and love that a lot. But you know what I did? I made it part of my job. And so things that you're passionate about doing, whether it's artwork, or things online, websites, anything like that, you turn into the most incredible typist, because we're constantly typing. That's a huge thing we do. But whatever you're passionate about, keep that in the back of your head, because when you apply for that job, do whatever it is the job requires there then. But see if there's anything else you can add to that, especially things that you're passionate about in life.
Thank you, Dave. That is awesome words of wisdom. I think Ryan also thought of his last question.
Sure.
So we'll wrap up with that question, and then we'll do our photo after that.
Hey.
Awesome. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hold on, I'm
Oh, you're writing it down.
writing. I'm still writing it.
Okay.
What year did you start at WIFC?
It would have been, I believe it was 1995. So it was late 1995. And the thing that I remember, which was a terrific memory right off the bat, is I was coming to work for WIFC, and the Green Bay Packers at that point were putting together a pretty good team, featuring Brett Favre, Reggie White, and all that. And we were about ready to go to the Super Bowl. And so the radio station asked me if I wanted to go broadcast at the Super Bowl. It was going to be in New Orleans. And so it was the Packers versus the Patriots. And I said, absolutely. And, them even asking me about that opportunity made me realize that I was at the right place. And so, that's when I got started that far back. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Which co-hosts were your favorite? What the ones that you worked with in the past? Which ones were your favorite?
I have several. I've kept in touch with just about every single one that I've worked with, but I was on the air the longest with Stacy Cole. And Stacy Cole, we were on the air together for 16 years, and she's still in the area. She's saving animals now. She works at a veterinary clinic and loves animals. And so that's her quest in life now. And but the other ones, I worked with Susan Kennedy, and she was somebody who's from Green Bay, loved Green Bay. And so she ended up moving back there. Karina was one of the coolest people in the world. I only worked with her for a year. And then she moved on to a bigger city. She actually works in Dallas, Texas now. So in the radio world, that's a huge step up. But she's extremely talented and made all the sense in the world. And the partner I've got now is Nikki Montgomery. And we've been friends for over 20 years because she's been a morning person on some of our other radio stations, like our country station. We own 101.9 WDEZ, that's the country station. But she did mornings there for 9 years. And so we were in the same building, seeing each other for years. And starting middle of last year, we started working together on WIFC, and it has been a dream come true. She is so fantastic. One of those people who is always positive, always, hey, whatever the job calls for, she's going to go ahead and take care of it. She never complains. And so that rubs off on everybody else in that positive attitude when she comes to work at WIFC.
And was Marky one of your favorites too? Marky Scott, was she one of your favorites too?
Who's that?
Marky Scott, was she one of your favorites too?
Absolutely. And Marky, the whole story behind Marky is we were on the air for about a year together. When she came on to do the morning show, because we talked earlier about, what kind of experience do you need to do radio? In her case, she didn't have any experience at all. She had done a little bit of radio. The way that she got her radio job is she actually won a radio contest on our rock station to go interview bands at a rock fest. And so that's how she got her radio start. And we were looking for somebody to do mornings with me. And so we were looking around all over the place. We were talking to a lot of people. We talked to a lot of applicants. And then Marky, she was right there and raring to go. And we thought, let's give this a try. We did it for a year, and Marky was fabulous. I think the morning show is a different beast because her personality she's more introverted than outroverted. And so for radio, you need that outrovert kind of personality on the air to wake people up. But Marky's fantastic. She's really, really cool. And I hope she gets back. She's not in radio right now, but I hope she gets back into radio at some point because she was terrific.
Very cool. All right. Can I ask everyone to join by the screen so we can grab a quick picture before we say bye?
I'm going to do that too.